Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Let's get myself situated here. You had a good night's sleep, and I hope after we're done this morning that you'll get outside. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day, certainly here in Sag Harbor. And I hope wherever you are that you are warm and comfortable. And let's get started as we always do, just with a little bit of singing, warm ourselves up. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good morning. We'll begin our service with thanks and gratitude on page 186. Modeh lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Thanks to you, Adonai, ever living sovereign, that you have restored my soul to me in mercy. How great is your trust. We turn now to page 192 at the very top of the page. Mahatovu Oalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Tohu Oalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Yisrael. We turn now to page 194 as we read in Hebrew at the top of the page, a blessing for our bodies. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Asher yatzar et Adam mechokhma, ubaravo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim. Galui biyadua livnei chisech vodecha, she'im yipatech echad mehem, o yisatem echad mehem, yefshar lehitkayem v'la'amod lefanecha. Baruch atah Adonai rofech chol basar, umafli la'asot. We're now on page 196, a prayer for our souls. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi Shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Please join me at the bottom of the page in English. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God, and God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Praised are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai, asher bi'ado nefesh kol chai veruach kol b'sar ish. Turn now to page 198, and we rise in body or spirit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasach b'bina lavchin ben yom u'ben layla. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ibrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechin mitzvah degaber. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten le'aev koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavir shena me'enai utnuma me'afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Oter Yisrael b'tifara. If you're still standing, please be seated at home as we turn to page 205. We'll read the second reading down from the top of the page, a blessing for the study of Torah. From the cowardice that shrinks from new truth, from the laziness that is content with half-truths, from the arrogance that thinks it knows all truth, O God of truth, deliver us. Blessed is Adonai, teacher of Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah l'amo Yisrael. Turn now to page 206. Elu demarim she'ein lahem shiur, she'adam ochel peroteihem ba'olam hazeh, והקרן קיימת לו לעולם הבא, ואלו הן כיבוד אב ואם וגמילות חסדים, והשכמת בית המדרש שחרית וערבית, והכנסת אורחים וביקור חולים, והכנסת כלה לוויית המת ועיון תפילה, והבאת שלום בין אדם לחברו, ותלמוד תורה כנגד כולם. We rise in body or spirit as we recite the opening blessing of Pezukei Zimra on page 212. Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam baruch hu, baruch hoseh v'reshit, baruch omer v'yosef, Baruch gozer umekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem sachar tov l'reav, Baruch halad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch podeh umatzil, Baruch shemo. Bishvachot uzmirot negadelcha, unshabecha nevayecha v'naskir shimcha v'namicha malkinu Eloheinu, Yachid chei ha'olamim, melech meshubach u'mufawar de'at shemo hagadol, Baruch atah Adonai, melech mehulal batishvachot. And if you're standing at home, please be seated. We're now on page 214, second line down in Hebrew. Tov lehodot l'Adonai, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, ואמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני. עלי אסור בעלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור, כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך רנן. מגדו מעשיך מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מה גדלו מעשיך מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מה גדלו מעשיך מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. We're now on page 215. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Od Yalelucha Od Yalelucha Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Od Yalelucha Od Yalucha Selah Shreham Shecham. Can you sound? ואנחנו נברכיה מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם. הללויה, 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 hallelujah, hallelujah. We're on page 218, Psalm 150. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, bekocho. Hallelujah, bekiahuzo. Hallelujah, bigurota. Hallelujah, kerov kulo. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 beteka shofar, hallelujah, dever bechinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, minim ve'ugav, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 Etzir Tzalei Shama, hallelujah, Etzir Tzalei Jua, Kol HaShama Tehallelujah, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Nishmat kol echai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. We continue silently to the bottom of page 219. We're now on page 220. Ihilu finu maleh shira kayam ulshonehinu rina kamon galav vesivtotenu shevach marchevei rakia veinenu meirot kashemesh vechayareach veyadenu frusot kenishei shamayim veraglehinu kalot kayalot ein anachnu maspikim lehodot lecha Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Veimotenu. Continue silent. On page 222, second paragraph down from the top of the page. Shochenad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chaturanenu tzadikim b'Adonai la yesharim nava tehillah Befi Sharim Titalav Direi Tzadikim Tit Barach Uvilshon Chasidim Tit Romamu Bekerev Kedoshim Tit Kadash Uvma Kehalot Rivevotam Chabet Yisrael Verina Yitpar Shimcha Malkeinu Bechol Dor Vador Yababai Yababai Bye 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 Yababai Yababai Bye Bye Yai bye bye yai bye bye ya bye 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 ay ya bye bye ya bye bye yai bye bye. We rise in body or spirit for the concluding blessing of Pazukei de Zimra on page 223, and then we continue on the next page for the Chatzi Kaddish and the page after that for the Baruch Hu. Yishtabach Shimecha Lad Malkeinu Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VeHaKadosh B'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz Ki Lecha Nae Adonai Eloheinu Elokei Avotenu Ve'imotenu Asher Ushbacha La B'Zimra U'Zumemshala HaNetzach Gedula U'Gvura Tehila V'Tiferet Kedusha U'Malchut Brachot vehodot me'ata ve'ad olam Baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol batishbachot el hahodot Adonai niflaot abocher b'shirei zimra melech el chei ha'olamim Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba ve'alma librachurtei ve'amlich malchutei v'chaychon v'yamechon v'chayei v'chol beit Yisrael ma'agala u'vizman karib b'imeru Amen Yehi shmei rabba mevarach le'alam le'almei al-mayav Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yit'aleh v'yit'alal Shemei dekudcha brichu Leila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damirat me'alma b'imeru Amen Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach Baruch Adonai at home, please be seated. We're now on page 228. We'll begin by reading the English together at the bottom, and then the 3 lines in Hebrew above, beginning with the words Or Chadash. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai, in wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created, may they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Or Chadash HaTzion Ta'ir. Or Chadash HaTzion Ta'ir. V'nizkechu lanu me'era le'oro. V'nizkechu lanu me'era le'oro. Yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai bim bam, yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai. Yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai bim bam, yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot. Turn down to page 230. We'll begin by reading the English together at the top of the page and then the Hebrew at the bottom. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears, whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Ve'ha'erinenu b'toratecha v'dabek limeinu b'mitzvotecha ve'yached le'vaveinu le'ahava u'yirah et shemecha ve'lo nevosh ve'lo nikalem ve'lo nikashel le'olam va'ed ki v'shem kodshecha Hagadol v'anura batachnu Nagila v'nismecha v'yeshuatecha Ve'avienu le'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz Ve'tolichenu komemiut le'artzeinu Ki el poel yeshuot ata u'anu v'achata Ve'keratanu le'shimcha Hagadol sela be'emet Leodot lecha lechecha be'ahava Baruch atah Adonai Habocher b'amo Yisrael mi'ahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Now on page 234. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha ve'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam ve'shivtecha b'veitecha u'b'lechtecha b'derech U'shachbecha u'kumecha, u'shartam leot ayadecha, v'hayu letotafot beninecha, u'chtavta amizot beitecha, u'b'hisharecha. We're on page 236. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber b'nei Yisrael b'amarta alehem, v'asu lahem tzitzit, al kanfei v'gdehem ledorotam v'natnu al tzitzit. Hakanaf b'til techelet v'haya lachem letzitzit uritem oto u'schartem et kol mitzvot Adonai ועשיתם אותם. ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים ללבכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת. Page 239, very top of the page. Emet, there is no place where you are not, even in the wilderness, there is your word. Emet, that pen strokes of lightning, white fire, black flame, stir the soul's passion, guide our sacred way. True and enduring is Torah. Your truth for us is certain and established, now and forevermore. Like Moses, Miriam, and all Israel, we sing out and rejoice. We're now back on page 238, 4 lines up from the bottom in Hebrew. Tehilot le'elyon baruch hu mevorach Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira besimcha rabba ve'amru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha שירה חדשה שיבחו גאודים לשמך על שפת הים יחכו למודו וימליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופדה קדומך יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. We begin the Amidah together on page 242 and then continue silently. Please go at your own pace, so when you're finished you may be seated. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. you're still, when you're silent timing down, please continue, as I said, at your own pace. You can mute me even, and then when you're done, you can catch up with us. For those that are finished, we'll rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 324 for the repetition of the ending. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, Mekoneh HaKol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'mevii Geula Livnei B'neihem, L'man Shemo B'Ahava, Nelech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham Ve'ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayim Metim Atarav Le'Oshiach, Mashiv HaRuach Morid Haga Hashem, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayim Metim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Ve'Rofech Olim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Mishenei Afar, Michamocha B'Gevurot, Umida Melach, Melech Memit, Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'nemat Al Chayot Metim, Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh HaMeitim. We're now on page 326. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, נלוך כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר, אדירנו, אדוני, אדוננו, מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, ומושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם. Elohai Zion, Ledor Vador, Hallelujah. We're on page 328. Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagid Golecha, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Ledor Vador, Nagid Golecha, ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. If you're still standing at home, please be seated. We're now at the top of page 329. Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg shat. Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. Mekadshei mekadshei shvi Shabbat. Kulam yismehu v'yitangu mituvecha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha shomrei 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 Shabbat v'korei oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Chemdat yamim אותו קראת השבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקוראי עונג שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. Zecher lemase bereshit Shabbat Ismechu v'malechutecha Shomrei Shabbat V'korei oneg Shabbat Eloheinu v'Eloi Avotenu v'Imotenu Ritzei v'imnuchateinu Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha v'ten chelkeinu v'toratecha Sahabeinu mitubecha Samechenu v'shuatecha V'taher libeinu Le'ovdecha v'emet V'anchileinu Adonai Eloheinu Ay lai 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 la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 V'aval ratzon Shabbat kodshecha v'nuchuva Yisrael Mekadshe shemecha Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. We turn now to page 330. We'll read together in English in the middle of the page. On this Shabbat day, as you graciously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough health to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults, and grant us the wisdom to be forgiving of others. Give us the courage to be true to our highest selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avor. We now turn to page 332, and we'll read together in English, beginning at the bottom of the page, and then each paragraph will end with the words in Hebrew, Modim anachnu lach, as we say thank you to God for all of these gifts. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations, Modim anachnu lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, Modim anachnu lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, Modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past, our future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, Modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, Modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fair world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, Modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, Modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lechana'eh lehodot. Turn to page 334, Sim Shalom, a prayer for peace. Sim Shalom, Tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, varcheinu yotzreinu kulanu kechad, ve'or panecha, ki be'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Torah chaim ve'ahavat chesed, u'tzedaka uvracha ve'rachamim nechaim ve'shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael hamecha v'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שים שלום טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו ועל כל ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. Let's read together on the top of page 337. Prayer is not purely an act. All things pray and all things pour forth their souls. The heavens pray, the earth prays, every creature and every living thing. In all life there is longing. Creation is itself but a longing, a kind of prayer to the Almighty. What are the clouds, the rising and the setting of the sun, the soft radiance of the moon and the gentleness of the night? What are the flashes of the human mind and the storms of the human heart? They are all prayers, the wordless outpouring of boundless longing for God. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'yimeru, amen. Seder Kriyat HaTorah, the Torah service begins on page 362 as we rise in body or spirit as the ark is open. Ein kamocha Elohim Adonai ve'ein kema'asecha malchutcha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai oz lamo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Avarachamim eitiva v'irtzoncha et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, ki becha levad batachnu, melech el Rav ben Adon olamim. Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udevar Adonai miYerushalayim. Baruch shenatan Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, le'amo Yisrael b'kdushato. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu Gadol, Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Gadol Adonai Tiru Nerhomema Shemo Yachtav. Lecha Adonai Hagedula Ve'agevura Ve'atiferet Ve'hanetzach Ve'hahon, ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz, ki chol b'shamayim u'ba'aretz. haaretz lecha Adonai hamamlacha ve'amit na'aseh lechol rosh. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodesho. Okay, if you're still standing at home, please be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This morning we are going to read the double portion that concludes the book of Exodus, Vayakel Pikudei. And as we've been talking about for the last several weeks, this is really the conclusion of a story that began several weeks ago, in which we are told first about the instructions for building the Mishkan, and then ultimately the building of the golden calf, and now the completion of the act of taking those instructions and actually building them. So in a moment I'm going to read from the beginning of the Parsha. So if you're already got your books in front of you, your Chumashim in front of you, that will begin on page 612 in the Plaid Chumash, and 612 in the Plaid Chumash, and 523 in the Women's Torah Commentary. So again, 523 in the Women's Commentary, 612 in the Plaid Chumash, or Exodus 35, chapter 35, verse 1, if you're following some other form, the beginning of the first of the double portions of Vayakel. But I want to teach a little bit about something that really applies to a different section of the portion, but is related to. So again, our sort of mindset going into this portion is that this is going to be, or this double portion, is going to be all about the building, the actual building of the Mishkan, and what it took to do that, and who was involved in it, and what the spirit about it was, and all those things. And so we can oftentimes pay more attention to the grandeur of it, right, and the bigger kind of ideas, and some of the commentators that like to really focus on the grammar, right, the individual words, and sometimes the individual letters that are unusual for one reason or the other, and give ample space for the rabbis to play around with and to try to understand, is there some deeper teaching here beyond just what is simply written. So the Orach Chaim, who I've quoted, feels like a bunch lately, who I just find to be a really fascinating commentator, and he is talking about this really interesting instruction, where most of the time, and this is where he says, it's strange that God phrases the directive to build the ark, particularly the Aron, and he's focusing on the Aron, using in Hebrew, what in Hebrew grammar is indirect speech. Okay, so the example is Va'asu Aron. So for those that are not as familiar with Hebrew, you'll just have to trust that basically is a future tense indirect verb, meaning that it's not a particular person that is doing a particular act, but really more an acknowledgement of something is going to get built, in this case, an ark. Okay, so the Orach Chaim says, that's a bit strange to be phrased in that kind of way. Right? It says, it's strange that God phrased the directive to build the ark in indirect speech, whereas the directives to construct the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the altar, the table, and the lampstand are all phrased in direct speech. And it gives the example of Va'asita. Okay, so this is really where, again, it is being done, as opposed to referring to it being eventually built, or being built by not one individual, but by a general building process. So he continues, not only does the Torah employ indirect speech in this verse, but when elaborating on the details of the construction, the Torah reverts to the use of direct speech. In other words, you shall cover it with pure gold, etc. Perhaps we could find in this anomaly a hint that the bulk of Torah, and I should just take a second to point out that the rabbis basically consider the ark and what is housed within the ark as synonymous to Torah. Okay, so they're using this analogy in their drawing, right? Perhaps we can find in this anomaly a hint that the bulk of Torah cannot be fulfilled by any individual, but requires participation of the entire nation. Okay, in other words, unlike the other parts of the Mishkan, the structure itself, the table, the lampstand, all the other kinds of things, the ark, or the Torah, as Orach Chaim is making that leap of connection, can't be built in the direct form. It has to be built in an indirect form. In other words, it can't be done by any one person. It has to be considered the responsibility of many. So the Orach Chaim continues his thought And he says that no single individual, and he's just making this as an empirical point, no single individual can fulfill all the commandments of the Torah, however much they may desire to do so. And he's factually correct, and he'll explain what he means. If, for example, an individual happens to be a priest, a Kohen, he can't fulfill the commitment, or the commandment, I should say, of allocating the 24 gifts which the Torah directs the Israelite to give to the priest. In other words, if you're part of the priestly caste, there are certain mitzvot that you can follow that others can't, but you yourself can't follow the commandments to support the priest. You'd be supporting yourself. Okay? And he continues and gives another example, right? He can't fulfill the commandment of redeeming his firstborn son, because that's a process the Kohen has to do for others, not for themselves. A Levite also is prevented from fulfilling certain commandments by the mere fact that he is a Levite. Okay, and this is true of really the Kohanim as well, right? Things that they can't do as it regards, for example, being involved with a dead body, right? That Kohens, unless it's your immediate family, aren't allowed to go into cemeteries. All these kinds of things are basically pointing out the fact that of all the 613 mitzvot, even if you were the most pious person ever, even if the temple was still standing, right? It's impossible for a single individual to fulfill all the mitzvot entirely on their own. So he continues, the Or HaChaim continues, the phrasing V'asu Aron in the indirect plural may be intended to remind us of this fact. In other words, that the experience of living Judaism in the form of the fulfillment of the mitzvot can't be held by a single individual, right? There's no one, even the high priest can't be responsible for all. That ultimately speaking, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, that we are all responsible for each other as part of the Jewish people. We have to fulfill the mitzvot in our best way possible, but together. That Torah is not the sole property of any individual, no matter how remarkable or pious. And that ultimately speaking, while certain things, like the Mishkan itself, right, the table, the lampstand, our synagogues of today, right, there are plenty of things that individual Jewish people may be involved in more than others. But fundamentally speaking, the core of all of it, right, strip away the building, strip away even the Sidurim, strip away everything else, right, what are we left with? We're left with the Torah. This is our foundation. This is our building block. And it's essential to understand that this Torah belongs to all, both in terms of possession and in terms of responsibility. So I think that what we have to do, especially right now, as I was talking about last night, is we're contemplating a year's worth of the pandemic and what have we learned, where have we gotten ourselves to, that one of the things that I think in a positive way we've demonstrated is that when the pandemic began, it seemed very rational to me that people would run away, right? That I would be left here by my lonesome in some form or the other, not just physically, but spiritually. And instead we found the exact opposite, really, is that this community has redoubled its sense of itself and connected itself in even greater ways than previously, right? That everybody responding to the tragedy of which we have seen unfold and continues to unfold, that we have really gathered together in a stronger kind of way to take responsibility for doing this together, right? Understanding that we couldn't do it alone, right? You could have said to yourself at home, you know what, Rabbi Dan will pray for everybody, it'll be fine. And you didn't do that, okay? We don't do that. As Jewish people, we don't do that. We don't rely on a single individual to take care of everything on their own, one way or the other. And so I'm just very appreciative, this Shabbat especially, in thinking about this idea that just as the original Ark was constructed in a way in which everybody had to have awareness and involvement, our Torah here, it wouldn't exist and wouldn't be sustained unless all of us really made this community a place that could house the Torah and to support it and to love it and to appreciate it in the way that we do week in and week out. So that's all a way of saying my gratitude to all of you who are watching, and certainly more than just who are watching, right? This entire community, for really internalizing this teaching. And I hope that as we continue to make the Torah our shared heritage every week, that this year as we move forward, to really, again, continue this great work and not lose this momentum. I think it really is something remarkable that needs to be lauded. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. And again, a reminder, I'm going to start reading from the beginning of the double portion on page 612 in the Plaut, 523 in the Women's Torah Commentary. And while we won't be reading from the exact end of the book, when we finish a book of Torah, we use the words Chazak, Chazak, V'nit Chazek, both celebrating the fact that we have completed another study of the book of Exodus, but also a reminder to ourselves that, again, our strength certainly comes from our connection to each other, but is drawn very much from our shared tradition as embodied in the Torah itself. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMborach. Baruch Adonai Borach L'olam Va'ed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Vayakel Moshe et kol adat Bnei Yisrael vayomer aleichem Ele hadvarim asher tziva Adonai lasot otam Sheshet yamim taseh melacha Uvayom hashvi'i Yeh lachem kodesh Shabbaton l'Adonai Kol ha'oseh bo malacha yumat Lo tavaru esh bechol moshvotechem beyom haShabbat. Vayomer Moshe el kol adat bnei Israel lemor Zeh hadavar asher tziva Adonai lemor Kechu meitchem truma l'Adonai kol nediv limo Yevyeha et trumat Adonai lahav chesef unechoshet utechelet ve'argaman v'tolat shani v'shesh ve'izim ve'orot elim me'adumim ve'orot echashim ve'atzei shitim shemen lama'or u'vesamim l'shemen ha'mishecha ve'liktoret hasamim ve'avnei shoham ve'avnei miluim la'efod ve'lachoshen ve'chol chacham lehiv bachem yavohu v'yasu et kol asher tziva Adonai. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch Ata Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Before we address the Torah, we are going to take a moment to offer a prayer of healing on page 371, our Mishaberach. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu, Abraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, Hu Yivarech et HaCholim ha'elu. We begin by thinking of those in our community and connected to our community. Estella Gass, Sylvia Owen, Yerachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Chauhan, Samuel Moskowitz, Audrey Lubo, Chaim Leib, Andrew Edelman, Robert Posner, Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollack, Jane London, Catherine Guarino, Emunah Chava, Sandra Furman, Raina Walsh, Deirdre Klein, Stephanie Skitt, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Roz Brody, Chana Ruth Batzara, Marlise Silverberg, Susan Spruce, Fagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Batzara, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Ida Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tui Menachem Ben Chaim, Rivka Bat Devorah, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Neil Elliott and Eileen Rosen, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kassoff, Shelley Newmark, David Kal Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, and Leah Bat Naomi. And of course, if you're thinking of anyone this morning we didn't mention, you can mention their names aloud at home or simply hold them in your hearts. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yamalei Rachamim Aleihem Lahachalimam Lerapotam Lachazikam V'Yishlach Lahem Mehira Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf Hashtabag Alav Zman Kariv and Omar Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are suffering. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say together, Amen. El Narefanala, El Narefanala, El Narefanala, Refuah Shelema, El Narefanalo, El Narefanalo, El Narefanalo, Refuah Shelema. And we will turn now to the bottom of page 370 for Hagba and Delilah. Unfortunately, I'm still nursing that back injury, so one more week I think I will be ready to lift again. But certainly we will give the kavod deserved to the Torah as we wrap and redress it. Again on page 370. Vezot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Okay, please be seated at home. So this morning's Haftarah is another of the special Haftarot that usually appear between Purim and Pesach. This is called Shabbat HaChodesh. It's the Shabbat that immediately precedes the month of Nisan, the month in which we celebrate the holiday of Pesach, and which is, believe it or not to complicate things, one of the various New Years of our tradition. It is the New Year of the holiday cycle, which has a pretty good rationale for why that would be the case. And just as an aside, that's part of the reason why, if you may remember, in the part of the Torah that describes when Rosh Hashanah happens, right? We call Rosh Hashanah the New Year, which it is. But it's one of the New Years. It's the New Year of the calendars. But ultimately speaking, it's the New Year of creation. But the calendar, as it relates to the holidays, begins by counting from Nisan, the month of Pesach. So in actuality, the Torah instructs us that Rosh Hashanah is in the 7th month, not the 1st month. But that again is because this month of Nisan is also considered to be the, again, beginning of the holiday cycle. So we celebrate it by acknowledging it on the Shabbat that immediately precedes, and this is the one that it is preceding, or beginning, as I should say, the month of Nisan. So if you have a Plav Chumash at home, you're looking actually towards the back of the book, page 1457, 1457. And if you are following in some other fashion, you're looking for the prophet Ezekiel, chapter 45, verses 16 to 25. Not terribly long. Again, chapter 45, 16 to 25 of Ezekiel. Before we do that, we will offer the blessing on page 372. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim, v'ratza b'divrehem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai Abocher b'Torah u'Moshe abdo, u'Yisrael amo b'nvi'eh ha'emet v'ha'tzedek. All the people of the land must join the Prince of Israel in making this contribution. And the prince's obligation for the whole burnt offerings, the meal and drink offerings on festivals, on new moons, and on Sabbaths, on all the appointed festivals of the house of Israel, will be this. He must prepare the purgation offering, the meal offering, the whole burnt offering, and the offerings of well-being to make atonement for the house of Israel. Thus says the eternal God, on the first day of the first month, take a young bull of the herd without blemish and purify the sanctuary. Let the priest take some of the blood of the purgation offering and put it on the doorposts of the temple, and on the four corners of the altar's base, and on the posts of the gate of the inner court. On the seventh day of the month, do the same thing for those who have sinned accidentally or through inexperience. Thus shall you wipe the temple clean. The 14th day of the first month shall be your Passover, and during the seventh-day festival unleavened bread shall be eaten. On that day let the prince provide a bull as a purgation offering for himself and for all the common people. Let him present a whole burnt offering to the Eternal each of the 7 days of the festival, consisting of 7 bulls and 7 rams without blemish, and a goat each day as a purgation offering. For each bull and each ram let him also provide an offering of an ephah of grain and a hin of oil. He must do the same thing on the festival beginning on the 15th day of the 7th month, providing the same purgation offering, whole burnt offering, meal offering, and oil for 7 days. We'll turn back to our prayer books and to page 372 for the blessings after the Haftarah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer v'yoseh hamdaber umkayem, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ביום השבת הזה, שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha-Shabbat. Amen. We will rise as first we offer a prayer for our country and then a prayer for the state of Israel, and then we will mark the coming of the new month before we return the Torah to the Ark. Prayer for our country can be found on page 376. Thus says Adonai, this is what I desire, to unlock the fetters of wickedness and unite the cords, untie the cords of lawlessness, to let the oppressed go free, to break off every yoke. Share your bread with the hungry and take the wretched poor into your home. When you see the naked, give clothing and do not ignore your own kin. If you banish the yoke from your midst, the menacing hand, the evil speech, if you offer compassion to the hungry and satisfy the famished creature, then your light shall shine in darkness. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace, and may we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. We turn to page 377, a prayer for the state of Israel. Avinu shebashamayim tzur Yisrael legoalo, barech et medinat Yisrael, reshit tzmichat gulatenu. Agen aleha be'evrat chastecha, ufros aleha sukat shlomecha. Ushlach orcha va'amitcha l'rashea, v'sarea v'yoatzea. V'taknem be'etzah tova milfanecha, v'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam liyoshveha, v'nomar amen. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. And now we remain standing in body or spirit as we turn to page 379 to mark the coming of the new month. Yehi ratzon milfanecha Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu shetechadesh alenu et hachodesh haba l'tova v'livracha v'titen lanu chaim arukim, chaim shel shalom, chaim shel parnasa, chaim shetehei vanu ahavat Torah v'yirat shamayim, chaim she'imalu mishalot libeinu l'tova. Amen. Our God and God of our ancestors, may the new month bring us goodness and blessing. May we have long life, peace, and prosperity, a life exalted by love of Torah and reverence for the divine, a life in which the longings of our hearts are fulfilled for good. Rosh Chodesh Nisan yeh b'yom Rishon. The new month of Nisan will begin on Sunday. We remain standing as we turn back to page 374 as the Torah is returned to the Ark. Yehallelu et Shem Adonai, ki niskav shemo levado, hodu al eretz v'shamayim, vayarem keren li'amo, tehila lechol chasidav, livnei Yisrael amkeroho, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem, Torati al tazovu, et chaim ehi la'achazikim ba, v'tomecheha meushar, deracheha darcheinu am, v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh chadesh yameinu chadesh yameinu kekedem. They remain standing as we turn to page 586 at the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol latet gedula liotzer breshit shelo asanu kigoye haratzot velo samanu kemishpechot adama shelo samech elkeinu kahem vegor aleinu kechol amonam ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. We're on the top of page 588. שהוא נוטה שמיים ועושה לארץ ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו בגול ומרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכינו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום, והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים, בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת עינו. ונאמר בחיי אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Now invite those in mourning and those observing yard sites to rise in body or spirit at home as we first remember those who have passed in recent months. Miles Ambrose, Fred Eber, Nancy Fisher, Edwin Friedman, Lucy Gladstone, Lois Herr, Phyllis Katz, Madge Judith Parcher, Steve Popkin, Vera Shaps, Virginia Tizer, Marjorie Weinberg Berman, Ann Weiss, and Danielle Lisa Riggs. We also mark the yard sites that occurred during the last week for Beatrice Aaron, Philip Chester, Arthur Cohen, Rose Decker, Harry Fleischer, Molly Fleischer, Herta Cohn, Nettie Levin, Shirley Moskowitz, Kiki Riskin, Ted Ronick, Seidel Saltzman, Samuel Sanborn, Diane Severnak, and Leonard Barons. If you're thinking of anyone else this morning we didn't mention, you can mention the names at home or simply hold them in your hearts. I'll invite the mourners to join me on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yamechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam le'almei almayim. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Okay, if you're still standing at home, please be seated. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. A few announcements. First is, of course, to please join us for Torah study on Zoom at 12 o'clock in just a little bit. Also, really one of the great highlights of our calendar year, one that I myself, for good reasons, am not at the lead of, which is our annual Women's Seder, which is hosted by our Women's Rosh Chodesh group, which this year again will be on Zoom, which is at 2 o'clock on Sunday. But, having plenty of people that I know who are there year after year, and every year seeing it evolve and change and respond to the world and the challenges and the opportunities that we see in each changing year. The Women's Seder is just such an embodiment of really, I think, what the beauty of the Seder is as a concept. This idea of telling and retelling the story of the Exodus and bringing our personal experiences into it. And it's just such a wonderful thing. It's such a great part of our community. And I want to just thank all of the participants every year, certainly, but our leadership group that has worked through the Rosh Chodesh group, Cantor Lauren, who I know has put in a lot of work this year, as Cantor Emily did last year, and of course to Shelley, who pulls it all together. It's just, it's a remarkable thing, and I saw an advanced copy of the Haggadah, and it's truly beautiful. So I really just, again, a commendation to everybody who is a part of it, whether you lead it or you are a participant in it. It embodies everything I was talking about, quite frankly, in last night's sermon and everything I said this morning as part of our Torah service. So really, kol hakavod lach, or lachen, I should say. Also, we should note on Sunday at 11 o'clock, just a little bit earlier in the day, we have a virtual musical tour of Jerusalem. So please make sure to check out our website for the link to that. It should be really quite fun. Neda Mitzvah on Monday at 11:30 on Zoom. Hebrew School at 4 o'clock on Zoom. Social Justice Committee will have its regular meeting at 5 on Zoom. And then at 7 o'clock, we'll have a panel discussion on the film 13th. That film is available on Netflix. So as long as you have Netflix, you can watch it anytime between now and Monday at 7, and then come on for a discussion after that. On Tuesday at 5 o'clock, there's another schmooze time with Myra and Shelley. Just a good opportunity. No agenda, no learning, specifically at least. No, nothing, just a chance to schmooze, and to schmooze with two great schmoozers with Myra and Shelley. Again, that is on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. On Wednesday, my class, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel and the Prophets, will be back at 12. The B'nai Mitzvah class will meet later in the afternoon at 4 o'clock. At 7 o'clock on Wednesday evening, this is really exciting and really wonderful, we are going to have a private virtual tour of the church, which, again, maybe a strange thing, a synagogue is talking about a church, but not just any church, the church, this incredible cultural art institution that has been built by our friends April Gornick and Eric Fischel and so many others who participated in it, whose names I'm hoping to learn more about on Wednesday. But April has arranged for us to be able to get some highlights from inside of the building and outside of the building, and she and Eric and I think maybe some more will be on to answer some Q&A about the particulars of the church, how it came to be, what its intention is. And as I said, I think this is one of these ones we really want to show up for on that Zoom. We want to show them and to show the Sag Harbor community how connected we are to each other and how much we appreciate the fact that all this hard work is coming to fruition. And God willing, we will be inside the building sooner than later. But until that time, a virtual tour is pretty great. Also, let's see, on Thursday evening, Thursday late afternoon, 4 o'clock, the Museum of the Jewish People, Beit HaTfutzot in Tel Aviv, is going to give us another virtual exhibit, this time in honor of Women's History Month, which will feature some of the unique characteristics of their Wonder Woman exhibit. This is featuring Jewish women who have made significant contributions throughout the ages. Also a reminder, our community Passover Seder, second night Seder, will be on Zoom again this year. It's March 28th at 6 p.m. Just bring your own selves, your own food. You can share with your friends and family members if you'd like them to be able to join. Again, that'll be Sunday, March 28th at 6 o'clock. In advance of that, coming up Sunday, March 21st, very soon, as in next Sunday, I suppose, in the temple parking lot from 1:30 to 3 o'clock, come by for a Passover-related gift bag, maybe some matzah in there for you, which last year was quite a challenge. This year, hopefully not so much to find. But in any case, come by on the 21st. You'll see Ron, probably myself, maybe a few others, and a good chance to come back to the temple even if you can't quite come inside. Beyond that, we have a lot of stuff coming up that we're planning for April and beyond, but certainly for the rest of the month of March, we got a lot. Come to anything, come to everything, and again, thank you to everybody for continuing to make this community such a remarkable place. So, with all of that said, we're going to end with Adon Olam on page 625, and then we'll do Kiddush. Adon Olam Asher Malach V'terem Kol Yetzir Nivra Li'et Nasa B'chefzo Kol Azai Melech Shemo Nikra Ve'acharei Kichlot HaKol Levado Yimloch Nora Ve'hu Haya Ve'hu Hober Ve'hu Yeh Betifara Ve'hu Eli Ve'chai Goali Ve'tzorchem Li Be'etzara Ve'hu Nisi Umanos Li Venat Kosi Be'yom Ekra Ve'yado Afkid Ruchi Ve'tishan Ve'ahira Ve'imruchi Yeviati Adonai Li Ve'lo Ira. If you have wine or grape juice handy, you can join me on page 604 for Kiddush. Veshamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam merit olam beini uvein bnei Yisrael oti leolam Veshamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam merit olam Ki sheshet yamim asadonai et ha-shamayim et haaretz veshamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat Lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam merit olam Ubayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafa Shabbat vayinafa Shabbat vayinafash veshamru bnei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat lasot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam merit olam Haken berach Adonai et yom ha-Shabbat vayikadsheu sabri Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. Okay. Chaim, everyone. Shabbat shalom. Hope to see you for Torah study. If not, please take care of yourselves. And just one last word. We understand that there now are more and more appointments for vaccinations that are becoming available out here. So if you have any questions, if you're having trouble registering, if you need help of any sort, please contact me, contact Eileen in the office, let us know, and we'll do our very best to help. God willing, the next few weeks, I think we'll get most of our most vulnerable in the community taken care of, and then we will continue on. So just want to make sure I said that. Otherwise, I hope to see you for Torah study, and if you can, get outside today, walk around, get some air. It's a beautiful looking day. And with that, Shabbat Shalom.